Hey everybody, so I thought what I would do today is just make a short video, I guess talking about my current camera gear setup, so what I'm using in 2020 to shoot my landscapes. And if you've been following my channel in the past, you'll probably realise that I went through a little bit of a phase where I had been a very loyal Canon supporter for probably over 10-12 years. And I decided to start to look into the mirrorless option, and I made a switch to Fuji. So I got rid of all the Canon stuff and was with Fuji for a few years, and then decided to move to Sony. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail as to why I switched from Fuji to Sony. I've already covered that in another video, but at the moment I'm completely shooting all Sony gear, and I thought it might be quite helpful for some of you maybe just to have a look at what's in my bag for my landscape photography, and what cameras and lenses and that sort of stuff I'm using. So I guess one of the biggest things is probably going to be the actual body itself. So at the moment I am using the Sony a7R III. Amazing camera, fantastic, love the detail, love the quality of it. The files are huge, full frame, 42 megapixel, so there's a lot of detail being captured in the raw files. It's not perfect by any means. I don't know whether there actually is a perfect camera out there or not, but there are a few little niggles that I have with it, and yeah, image quality is fantastic, but one of the things I find with the raw files that come straight out of camera, now obviously raw files will be very flat, but I can sometimes struggle a little bit with the colours that come out of the Sony, and I don't know whether that is to do with me being with Fuji before, and the colours straight out of the Fuji cameras were the X-T2s that I had and the GFX, which I tried for a few weeks. The colours, even the JPEG straight out of camera, the colours were just insane. And if you nailed your exposure and your white balance, there's probably no reason why you couldn't have actually used the JPEG straight out of the Fuji. So going from that to the Sony, I definitely have noticed a difference, and I find I'm having to do a little bit more to the raw file in Lightroom or Capture One to try and get some of those nice colours back again. So I guess that's probably the only gripe that I would have with the Sony. Other than that, the actual body itself, the quality that comes out of the files, the detail, the sharpness is absolutely amazing. Okay, so next up is probably my most used lens for landscape photography, and it's the 16-35. This is the G Master, the 2.8 Sony lens. Now, before this one, I had the 16-35 f4, and to be honest, I never was completely happy with it. I always thought the images looked a little bit soft, especially at the corners, but there just seemed to be, I saw people posting stuff online, I saw prints that were made using the G Master, and the results just looked way better than what I was getting. So whenever I came back from Iceland, at the end of last year, I decided, one of the guys actually on the workshop had this G Master lens, and I took a few shots with it, and I decided, you know what, I think it's time to trade in and to upgrade. And honestly, this has probably been one of the best things that I've done with regards to my gear, because the sharpness and the contrast and colours that come out of this is fantastic. It's way superior to the f4 version, and as many of you know, I love shooting wide when I'm shooting landscapes, so a lot of the time I'm going to be shooting out at 16-18mm, because I'm trying to get the big vistas, and this lens here, it's fantastic. So this is definitely my go-to lens for landscapes, coupled with the a7R III. The other things I have in my bag, lens-wise then, this is the Sony This is the 70-200 f4. It's a lens that I normally carry in my bag, but I don't often use it for landscapes. I found actually when I was in Iceland that I did, because I was shooting a lot of maybe waterfalls from a distance, or maybe honing in on little subjects, or just I kind of was shooting slightly differently this year in Iceland, and I actually used it quite a lot. But for a lot of the stuff, especially the coastal photography I do, and when I'm out shooting seascapes, a lot of the time I end up actually not using this. But it is a fantastic lens, really sharp, and it's actually quite light for a 70-200. So that stays in my bag. The other lens that I use quite a bit then is the one I'm actually filming this with, and that's the 24-105. I actually got it more for shooting abstract stuff, because it gave me just a nicer, I found when I was using the 16-35 or the 70-200, there was a bit of a gap there, and then I constantly had to change lenses. But with the 24-105, it's a really good focal length where I can just really zoom in on a subject very quickly, or go really wide very fast, and it's probably quite a good general lens. Although it's f4, that doesn't really bother me, because with landscapes I'm shooting most of it at f11 or that sort of thing, so having it as an f4 lens isn't really a big issue. So those would probably be the three most used lenses that I would be shooting. I don't always take all of them with me, but I will always have the 16-35, and then depending on what I'm shooting, then I'll either have the 24-105, which is on that camera, or the 70-200 with me. Other things I carry, just a few extra batteries, which, to be honest, I don't really ever need to use, because the battery life in the Sony cameras now are so good that I could probably do several shoots on the one battery. Other little things, just an LED lenser head torch, and these are fantastic for if you're out shooting astro, or for sunrise and sunset, for getting back to the car. What else do I have? So I have a pano head from Really Right Stuff, and I keep this in the bag now, because I'm beginning to find more and more now my style is changing a little bit, and I'm trying to actually shoot more panos when I can. Now I do have the other slider that goes with this, but to be honest, it's so heavy and it takes up so much room in the bag, I actually don't use it that much, so I just have this in, and that just goes directly onto my tripod head here, which I'll talk about in a little moment. So another thing I have here is just a Peli case, which just has a few extra cards and whatnot in it. Really rugged, weather sealed, but again, it's more just as an emergency, because I tend to find that what's in the camera just does the job. Okay, and another thing in my bag is, if I can get it out, is filters. Now, where do you start? I've heard people commenting about, you know, should you use filters? Why do you really need to use filters if you can just bracket your exposures and then blend them in Photoshop using luminosity masks or something like that? And yes, absolutely, you can do that. Sometimes I do, but a lot of the time I find I'd rather try and get it right in camera with one shot, and spend less time having to worry about getting back home and having to, for every shot I want to create, I have to blend 2 or 3 shots just to kind of make one image. So when I can, I will try and get it right in camera with the filters. I'm using a mixture of circular polarizers, these ND filters, which are completely square, so these are 100 by 100 from Format High Tech, and then also the ND grads, which I'm sure most of you would be familiar with. They're dark at the top, and then they kind of gradually go down to being clear at the bottom. So these help me to balance the exposure between the sky and the foreground. And that's really it. The three main ones I use would be the Polarizer. So Polarizer is useful for, it helps to give the colours a little bit more of a pop, but it cuts out glare, can cut out reflections, so really handy if you're shooting anything with water or maybe rocks that could be wet, and as you rotate it you'll cut the glare and cut the reflections off them. And the ND filter, I use that a lot with seascape photography because the way I like to shoot, I like to use slightly longer exposures because I want to try and create more of an ethereal effect. So I'm going for those nice blurry water and kind of getting the motion and the white water in it. So I use a mixture of 3 stops, 6 stops and 10 stops of ND filters to do that. And then obviously, as I say, the ND grads. Will I continue to use filters? I'm not sure, I probably will. I don't think I could replace the Polarizer, and I definitely couldn't replace the ND filter, because one of the things it's doing is it's actually cutting out the amount of light that's getting into the camera. So I don't really know how I would recreate that in Lightroom or something like that. But whether I always use grads or not, I'm not sure. Possibly I will begin forgetting about grads and maybe blend exposures. I don't know, but at the moment I definitely would rather be just trying to nail it when I'm out shooting. So that may change. Watch this space. And I guess the other thing that I have with me all the time is my tripod, and this one here is Gitzo, and it is I think it's the G2543L, and I've had this tripod for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years now, and it's pretty much like new. A little bit of wear and tear, but it gets cleaned regularly, especially when I'm out shooting seascapes and stuff with it. I will, take it apart, clean the legs, kind of give it a good wash, put it all back together again. But amazing tripod, is carbon fibre, so it's quite light, and I have the Gitzo spikes in the bottom, which are amazing. I don't think I would use a tripod without them now, because they just give you so much more stability. And then the ball head, this is the really right stuff, the BH 55 or 50, I think it's 55, with the Arca Swiss compatible plate, which fits the L bracket. Actually, I didn't mention that, but the L bracket that's on my Sony fits into this here. And then the pano head also fits on here, so I can literally just do that, clip it on, and then once I get my tripod level, it's just a matter of rotating this here if I'm wanting to shoot panos. So really good system. The really right stuff is expensive, so is the Gitzo, but I imagine this could last me a lifetime if I look after it. So for me, I see it as an investment, and I've had lots of other tripods in the past and different ball heads, and they lasted for a while, and then yeah, I had to replace them. So I've had this for quite a few years as well, and definitely absolutely no need to change it. So really good setup. But I think that's probably most of my main gear. There are other little bits and pieces that I use, but I think that's probably the most of it covered. I haven't touched upon the bag today. I did a video on this before. It's a Nio Evo Fjord 36. It's okay. It's not amazing. I actually have a Shimoda Action X 30. Yeah, 30 on order. And obviously with everything that's happening at the minute, it's been held up. So I had been hoping to have it around December, and it still hasn't arrived. So fingers crossed that it comes soon, because it looks like an amazing bag and probably will do everything that I want a camera bag to do. So perhaps whenever it arrives, I will do a little bit of a review on it, but hopefully that has been a little bit insightful for you. I know I enjoy watching gear videos and stuff, so if you have any questions about any of the stuff that I'm using, please drop a little comment on the video below, and I will get back to you. But yeah, I think I probably need now to go and take some photos.